So, hey guys, I'm back. So about a year ago, I made a video explaining how I lost over 110 pounds. But honestly, from my experience so far, I've learned that losing the fat wasn't actually the hardest part. And it's crazy because modern society, all they focus about is weight loss and fat loss. And we even have multi-billion-dollar drug industry in that now with through GLP-1s. But a lot of people really just have a lot of people pretty understand fat loss pretty well now, but something I found is that almost no one actually knows how to build muscle in an efficient manner. So when I first started lifting, I'd look around my college gym and see guys throwing around like hundreds of pounds on squats, benching insane weight, but I never stopped to notice they weren't even hitting parallel on squats, or that half the bench presses were all shoulders, no chest, utilized momentum, and they were half reps. I thought building muscle was simple: move the most weight possible from point A to point B. It turns out that's not how your body works. So over the last year and a half, I've completely changed the way I think about training. My philosophy sits somewhere between your gym bro and maybe your scammy science-based guy. Probably closer to him without the scamming. I'm just honestly just doing this for the love of the game, man. This has changed my life for the better, and I think at this point I'm probably an expert. So, anyways, I stopped asking how can I move more weight, and I started asking myself how can I make this muscle work harder. And that single mindset shift actually changed everything. And so in this video, I'm going to break down every principle that helped me build muscle while staying lean. From exercise, lean as in below 20% body fat, which is well below the average American. I still have my abs, but they're pretty blurry right now, so that's okay though. So from exercise selection and deep stretch training to intensity, leverage, and even why I started doing things in the gym that it's going to look pretty ridiculous when you see this, but you're just going to have to trust me, and you're going to have the same mindset if you want to achieve the same results. And so once I started thinking about muscle growth, like, let me backtrack a little bit. I'm an engineer major. I'm working an internship this summer, so I'm actually extremely busy. I currently have a 3.9 GPA at Texas Tech Engineering. And that has actually taught me a lot about problem solving and creating efficient solutions rather than trying to band-aid things. And so back to how this applies to this whole story or video, I am now thinking about muscle growth like an engineering problem instead of a strength competition. And because of that, my physique went from, hey, this guy lifts to, wow, that is, I mean, at least most people say, wow, that is 1.5 years of lifting. You know, I didn't look like that till like 3 or 4. And yeah, I'm not saying it's amazing. It's not elite. It's not elite, but for 1.5 years, man, it'll be. I plan to compete eventually. So, yeah. And so now we're gonna get started. And as Mark Watney from my favorite movie of The Martian said, let's engineer the shit out of this. Welcome to Engineering Muscle Growth. So this was probably the biggest mindset shift I ever had. Your muscles don't know if you're curling 25 or 75 pounds. Your muscles don't know how many people watched your lift. Your muscles don't know your 1 rep max. All your muscle knows is how much tension and force is acting upon it. That's it. So if another muscle, momentum, or bad technique is doing half the work, then your target muscle isn't getting the stimulus you think it is. And once I realized that I wasn't trying to impress people, that instead I was trying to make one specific muscle work as hard as possible, everything changed. So I'll show you guys this video real quick. This is literally the average guy. This is probably a little bit of a worse example, but probably like the 25 percentile of how I literally see people leg press in the gym. Maybe half, actually. Maybe half, yeah, maybe average. So, I mean, this guy's actually decently strong. Even to do 24 plates for that fucking terrible form, that takes something. But, so, I used to think that adding 5 pounds every week meant progress, and honestly, it kind of does. That is a good sign, and in a way, it is progress. But moving weights in a close proximity to failure will cause muscle growth. So I started filming my lifts, and wow, I realized every time I increased the weight, my form would generally get a little worse, to the point where about 6 months ago, I would rewatch a video of my form and be like, what the hell happened versus, you know, when I first started lifting. I had better form when I first started almost. I would have a shorter range of motion now, sometimes, not now, sometimes more momentum, same tension maybe because the weight, but that was a lot more tension loaded onto my joints and not on the target muscle I was actually trying to explode. And so it looked stronger and probably impressed more people, but my muscles were actually doing less work. So now I would rather use 50 pounds perfectly than 70 pounds poorly. And moving on, deep stretch. Yeah. So a lot of my favorite exercises have one thing in common. They end up loading the target muscle in a deep stretch while keeping me incredibly stable. So for here, in this example, I've got what some people would be like, what the hell are you doing, dude? But this is an incline, or sorry, this is a cable preacher curl, and it's hard to feel something as stimulating on your bicep as this, and how much it has grown in just 8 weeks. It is actually visually noticeable, albeit small, because I am a natural. You guys probably knew that. I'm not that big yet, man. But so yeah. The purpose of this is to load the target muscle in a deep stretch while keeping me incredibly stable. And so the bench is kind of acting as a counterweight in a sense. And I'm pinning my elbow against the bench here, which pretty much puts my bicep on an island. I can literally only, if my elbow is locked in place here, I cannot start swinging my bicep, if that makes sense. And so think deep cable flies, overhead tricep extensions, pendulum squats, hack squats. Barbell is good. I'm not going to say it's not, but generally a little less stability on those, but you are able to load them well. Still more stability than literally I see people just stand up, no bench, nothing, just start like shoulder pressing, deadlifting. They're kind of dumb if you do that. I don't blame you. Maybe you're misinformed. And so this is stuff where I can get my bicep almost touching my face. Another thing I'll show you, I'll get my hamstrings touching my calves on literally all of my leg movements. Bayesian cable curls. Let me check if I'm still recording. Okay, cool. Don't want to record this again. Bayesian cable curls, deep machine chest presses here, or what I like to call the bicep exercise of the gods, the cable preacher curl. So the reason is simple. When a muscle is in a lengthened position, it experiences higher mechanical tension. Recent research also suggests that training at longer muscle lengths will be especially effective for hypertrophy. And so that doesn't mean every exercise has to maximize stretch. It just means if I stopped avoiding that uncomfortable bottom position and started owning it, then I would reap the benefits of that. So instead of say I'm like chest pressing here, if I'm gonna come back here, I'm gonna really let that weight pin my arms back and load my chest. And maybe I'll even get a brief little pause before I kind of drag the weight out. in space in front of me. And I'm not going to kind of come back here and then I'm not going to do that, right? I'm not going to utilize momentum to move as much weight as possible. So another huge advantage is that these exercises are extremely stable, as I kind of talked about. When you're not trying to fight to balance the weight, it's much easier to focus entirely on the muscle you're trying to train, and I'll kind of get into this more a little later. And so again, this changed everything. So I'm going to show you another video here. I think the average person in the gym struggles with one of two things. If you're newer to lifting, it's actually learning proper technique and actually training with intent instead of just moving the weight from point A to point B. But if you've been lifting for years, it's actually usually the opposite. You know, the exercises where you stop paying attention to the details, your tempo gets fast, your control quality of the rep drops. So the lowering phase of the lift is actually where you're resisting a lot of the weight. So here, humans are extremely strong at this. Your muscles are capable of producing a lot of force during this phase, which is one reason it's such a valuable part of the exercise. If you simply let gravity drop the weight. So instead, if I came here, and then instead of coming up slow, I just did that, then I'm giving away part of the stimulus. I'm just saying, hey, gravity, take this stimulus away. I could have just easily gotten there. And so my goal became simple: control the weight on the way down, or in this case, the way up, and even pause when it makes sense to eliminate momentum. Pausing isn't 100% like OP, like, oh, you should do this every time, but pausing is often beneficial. And so then you drive the weight back up or down, drag down with intent. And so every rep should look almost identical here. The only difference should be that as you get closer to failure, these last few reps naturally slow down because your muscles are running out of glycogen and the ability, not glycogen actually, sorry, the ability to produce force, and not because your technique falls apart. So if your first rep looks completely different from your last rep, you're probably completely different. You're probably not training the muscle as consistently and efficiently as you should be. So on my final exercise for a muscle group, I'll sometimes squeeze out a couple of little cheat reps or partials after I've reached technical failure. So, I mean, a couple times on this exercise, I'll kind of, instead of like really dragging it down just with triceps, I'll kind of bring my abs into this and kind of lean forward and put my weight into that. At that point, I'm just trying to extract every last bit of stimulus I can. But what we're going to get into soon is there's a trade, or actually, we'll get into that now. There's a trade-off. The question isn't, does cheating stimulate muscle growth? It absolutely can. The real question is whether the extra stimulus is worth the extra fatigue. And so cheat reps are usually much more taxing on your body, your joints, and your recovery. So if every exercise turns into swinging weights, what the heck? Turns into swinging weights and grinding ugly reps, you're kind of digging yourself into a recovery hole that can hurt the quality of your next workout. So that's why I think training through the lens of stimulus versus fatigue is probably the best thing that you can do. How much muscle building stimulus am I creating on a target muscle, and how much fatigue am I paying for that? The goal isn't to make every set as miserably mentally taxing as possible, but to get the biggest return on every unit of fatigue you accumulate. This is how we're going to be the gym bros, and the science-based dudes are really science-based dudes are already doing it, but I have some more kind of tricks I think that helps beat those guys too. And so if you kind of see here, I mean, this is literally like, wow, like, whoa, the video cuts off. Oh wait, okay, here we go. I mean, maybe if you're really nitpicky, you can say that my form wasn't perfect there. I mean, it kind of does look like it. Can we play the video, man? It kind of does look like it is technically perfect, though. So this is what I would call technical failure. You should be doing this on almost everything, right? And so, again, sometimes I'll kind of get my abs and lean into it. And again, look how I'm using a bench stability, man. Shit literally lights up your triceps like nothing you've ever seen before. I don't know why the video keeps cutting off. You get my point, though. And so, here's the second biggest thing that changed my training. I go to a pretty expensive gym, and even with my student discount, it's almost like $70 a month. But you'd think everyone there was training like they're trying to earn a pro card or something, like just based off the price, but the crazy thing is I'll see someone finish a set, and usually I think nice, they're getting their warm-up sets in, and even I think this at the college gyms too. And then they do another and another and another, and then I realized that was their working sets. And so they're not even remotely close to failure. And when I first started lifting seriously, I thought I trained hard too, and compared to the average gym goer, I did. But I had no idea how much more effort I still had in the tank. Most of my sets ended with 1 to 3 reps in reserve because that's what a lot of the science-based content creators I followed back in the day recommended. The concern was always that training to failure creates too much fatigue. And they're not exactly wrong. Failure absolutely creates fatigue. But that's where our exercise selection comes in. If you're choosing stable as hell exercises with a huge high stimulus to fatigue ratio, you can often push closer to failure while still recovering extremely well. And so that's what we do. And today, almost every working set I do ends with 0 to 1 RIR while maintaining good technique. On safer isolation exercises, I'll occasionally take a set to true muscular failure. But if you finish a set and think I could probably repeat that in a minute, not even a good chance. I'm sure that you weren't very close to failure. So this is why I actually rest 2 minutes, 30 seconds, 3 minutes on isolations. And on my compound lifts, I'd go 4 to 5 minutes sometimes. I'm on pendulum squats, when I'm going to failure, usually I bring a bench over and I take a little nap for about 6 or 7 minutes. So yeah, you can judge me if you want, but that's what it takes sometimes. So one of the main drivers of muscle growth would be that, recruiting as many muscle fibers as possible. And by resting, then you're recovering as much muscle fiber as possible. And also, yes, it burns, that's the point. But that doesn't mean every exercise should be 25 rep death marches. One reason I personally prefer moderate rep ranges, usually somewhere around 6 to 12 reps, sometimes a little higher, is because it's much easier to judge how close I am to failure. If I'm grinding through rep 7 and barely lock out the weight, I know if I barely lock out the weight, kind of coming up over 3, 4, 5, I know exactly where I stand on that difficulty curve. But if I'm doing sets of 25, like sometimes I'll see people spamming, cable lat raises like that. Was rep 22 actually my last good rep, or did I still have 5 more? And my point is, the further the rep count climbs, the harder it can become to accurately. Oh look, my bad. My night mode is coming on for sleep. So the farther the rep count climbs, the proximity to failure, especially for new lifters, is very hard to accurately gauge. And from a lot of different studies, we can see people have no idea how actually close they are to failure once you get past the 12 reps. People were pretty good at having an idea of where they were at the 6 to 10 range. And so the takeaway isn't that high reps are bad. My mom has done body pump and built a decent amount of muscle. And although that probably wasn't ideal, the takeaway is that whatever rep range you choose, you should train with intent and get genuinely close to failure if your goal is maximizing muscle growth. Moderate volume. So I used to think if 10 sets were good, then 20 had to be better. At one point, I wanted my chest to grow so much more than anything else. So I was doing 24 hard sets every week. And that's when I learned, wait, nothing is going up. Recovery might matter. A hard set is expensive and taxing on the body. And so every set costs recovery, and your body has a limited budget. I'd rather do 12 incredible sets than 25 mediocre ones. Every set has a purpose, gets tracked, and is performed with intent and to a high level of intensity. Every set is close to failure, and my main philosophy here is that the quality beats quantity. And the reason, okay, so the reason I say moderate is, does that mean everyone should train with low volume? Not at all. This is one of the most debated topics. So here I can actually be wrong. Pretty humble there, I know. Everything else, I'm honestly pretty confident on is the best thing you can do. But everyone has a different recovery capacity. How much volume you benefit from depends on your genetics, your sleep, your nutrition, and the exercises you're doing. If you're doing my exercise, you should be able to run a little higher volume. So for most people, somewhere around the 10 to 12, 10 to 20 hard sets is a productive starting point. I would not go below 6, or I definitely would not go above 20. If you are above 20 anything, you are doing something wrong and not training hard enough. So some people will grow best near the lower end of this range, while others can recover from and benefit from more. So the goal isn't to do as many sets as possible. The goal is to do as many high quality sets as you can recover from. This is kind of going back to that stimulus to fatigue ratio. Everything kind of ties into that, right? So once your performance starts dropping, your joints start aching, or you're no longer progressing from week to week, adding more volume probably is not the answer. Recover from your training and don't recover to train. So here I have an example of my push day. So as you can see, my chest is kind of a bird chest. That's definitely my weakest part of my body. Honestly, yeah, that'll always be my weakness, I guess. So here I have 6 hard sets of chest program. So you can notice how everything here is below the 15. Honestly, this is just for everyone watching the video. I never go above 13 typically. If I go above 12, I kind of try to move the weight up, right? So all of these amazing exercises, OP push day, man. By the way, this is relatively new, probably 8 weeks old. This has exploded my chest. Probably more in 8 weeks than probably 5-6 months of what I did in the last 1.5 years. Okay, anyways, guys, to my next point. Stability makes muscles work harder. If balancing the weight is the hardest part of the exercise, then your target muscle isn't the limiting factor. Your nervous system is actually going to keep you busy upright instead of letting you focus on producing the force and torque with the muscle you're trying to grow. So I started making my exercises more stable. Again, be the guy. You want as much stability as possible. People will be like, oh, name the stabilizer. People will be like, oh man, I want my stabilizers to be trained. And that is probably maybe a thing, but maybe probably is a big word there. The thing is, you can't name 3 stabilizer muscles. I think that there can be more specific training targets, such as an athlete might want to do something where he needs more balance. But I would argue that this is pretty solid balance too. And so anyways, I want you guys to be the guy that fucking drags the bench to the cable stack. You need to be that guy. And you need to brace yourself against that pad. And honestly, yes, sometimes people are going to look at you funny, but who really gives a shit? You're paying for that gym membership too. And if moving a bench 10 feet lets you get significantly more stimulus, then move the damn bench, man. Like, I'm tired of people, they're like, I don't want to drag a bench across the gym. Dude, you're only at the gym for like 5 hours a week. If you don't want to sacrifice an 1,000th of your day moving a bench across the gym to get way more gains, then that's on you, man. So I've had people give me weird looks before. I've had one guy complain recently. It's rare and it lasts about 30 seconds, and the results last a lot longer. Kind of tying into my first point, stop optimizing to look normal and start optimizing for muscle growth. With this exercise selection, you can actually train to failure without frying your CNS. So that's the difference between copying exercises and sort of engineering them. Earlier I showed you guys my bench preacher. This is actually a new version. Again, going back to my point, this is a new version I have developed. This is the weirdest looking shit you can ever do, man, but trust me, this lights up your biceps even more, dude. Actual grind, hold on. Tough one there. Actual grinder coming in. 2, 3, drag, 5, 6, almost 6 seconds on that one. But, oh man, that lights up your biceps. Next little point here, short point, physics lesson here. Talking about moment arms. This sounds complicated, but it's actually really simple. I want you to imagine that you're pushing open a door, and if you push right next to the hinge, that's going to be hard, right? If you push on the handle, that's easy. And so that's called lever arms and moment arms. Your body kind of works a pretty similar way with the machines. So the direction the resistance pulls relative to your joints changes how much torque your muscles have to produce. So in the gym, I'm asking a different question. I am not trying to make the exercise easier for myself. I'm trying to make it harder for the muscle I'm trying to grow. So I want you to take this hack squat as the example and notice the blue lines here. That's the direction the resistance is generally pulling. It's a rough guess, but it should be close. So the further that line acts from my knee joint, the more torque my quads are going to have to produce to move the weight. And so now notice what happens as I get into the deepest part of the squat. My quads are in a deep stretch here, again, calves to hamstrings, and they're still producing a tremendous amount of force to reverse the weight. I want you to notice here that I'm... Oh, this is an older lift. Okay. Yeah, this should be probably about 3 months old. But I was only doing 90 pounds here. But that is... I have way bigger legs than a lot of the dudes that will go and they'll slap on another 25 here. And another thing, deep stretch, guys. I have some plates set up here that lets me go even deeper. I mean, my ass is really down here. And so this is exactly where I want to challenge my quads. Again, I'm not chasing the heaviest weight possible. I'm chasing the greatest amount of tension or torque on my quads. That's why I don't cut my squats short. You shouldn't. I want to spend my time in the hardest, most productive part of the movement. And so a great question you could ask is, well, dude, why not just increase the weight so you don't have to increase moment arm? The answer to that is this is way less fatiguing on your body and joints. Loading more and more weight is necessary for progressive overload. I'm not an advocate at all for low weight, high reps. Again, you've seen that. I'm not an advocate for you should not be sized this way. Yeah, my gains exploded. Sorry about that. Okay, moving into one of my favorite parts. Another thing that really sets me back was thinking that bulking, or what an improvement phase, or what many people like to call bulking, is like a competition to be able to throw the most food down possible. But I just want to get one thing straight real quick. Bulking is not an excuse to go eat junk food. In fact, out of my 28 meals a week, one of them is not even what most people would define as a cheat meal, in a sense that it might not be something that aligns 100% with my goals, but it is still a real whole food. So my favorite personally is Texas barbecue, but for this week it's going to be sushi, because these are real foods centered around protein, carbs, healthy fats, animal fats. Carnivores are stupid. I'm not an advocate for high fat, but animal fats are healthy. So you don't need to gain 3 pounds a week. A modest caloric surplus gives your body extra energy without piling on the unnecessary fat. It's funny, I put this here. This is Chris Helms, which actually did Eric Helms. This is actually the dude that did most of the high quality bulking studies. And this is his physique here, which is pretty freaking good, man. His genetics suck, and he has an amazing physique. And so Currently, I keep my calories around 550. I'm also a 6'1" dude with a huge, large bone frame. My family is generally just larger guys. I'm actually probably one of the smallest frame-sized people in my extended family. But this is actually only puts on 0.5 pounds weekly for me. So this is a lot for most people, really, but most people should look to put on 0.25. And if you're an absolute noob, 0.75 is probably the upper limit there. I would not go above 0.5 unless you're, again, a noob and very sensitive to muscle stimulus. So the goal is to see your lifts in the gym go up. Do not, in contrast to chasing high scale numbers. And don't get me wrong, the scale is a useful tool to make sure you're gaining mass at a reasonable weight. However, it should not be the only thing you're looking at. So I want to talk really briefly about surpluses. So this is an example of people really just do not understand how little you need to gain. And you know, calorie deficit is a common word. Nowadays, everyone's trying to lose weight. A caloric surplus is not something people hear about often. So a small surplus, this is literally what my surplus would look like in a day. Like 2 medium-sized Yukon potatoes. Off the top of my head, that's about probably 60 grams of carbs, which is 240 calories, which is 0.5 pound week. No. Actually, I'm getting a little less than 0.5 now that I think about it. But yeah, it's even better, so it's fine. So this is literally an idea of what my surplus would look like in a day. Here's what a lot of morons will think that dreamer bulking is a good idea. Let me eat at maintenance, and then let me down an entire Papa John's pizza with my buddies. Yeah, man, your physique probably reflects that, so good job. So I'll finish with food, actual food here, because none of this matters if you don't give your body the materials to build the muscle. For years, bodybuilding was simplified into one phrase: just eat in a just eat, bro, just eat in a calorie surplus. And technically, that's kind of true, but it's really incomplete. The body builds muscle out of amino acids, and it fuels that stimulative training with carbohydrates, and then it then recovers using the micronutrients and essential fats such as avocado, olive oil, and animal fat, sleep, and hydration. And so I stopped treating food as like just calories and protein I needed to get down, and started actually treating it as a building material. I'm a big back at heart, but this comes really nice because I can gain weight eating broccoli. I love eating everything, and a lot of people say bulking's hard, man. Bro, pick up the fork. That's all I can say. And so, protein high, carbs even higher. I eat probably, off the top of my head, about 2,500 out of my 4,500 calories are carbohydrate. So I ate a shitload of carbs because they let you train harder. This is the biggest mistake. Carbs are bad, man. You're stupid. They actually let you train harder and recover better. Carbohydrates are more anabolic than fats are, and people will disagree with me, but the evidence does not support the other position there. Insulin is a very anti-catabolic hormone, so that means the more carbs you eat, the less your body wants to rip away muscle. So protein is actually anabolic in that your body will literally build more muscle, while carbohydrates are anti-catabolic, meaning that your body wants to take away less muscle the higher carbohydrate intake you have. So make sure you still get in your healthy fats though for hormones, especially if you're natural. So I made sure that I was getting tons of fruit and vegetables every single day. These pictures are pretty much scaled on how often I eat the food. Eat your potatoes, man. that should be a whole slide by. So eat your potatoes. So could you probably build muscle eating Pop-Tarts and protein shakes like I've seen some people do? Probably. Would they have the same gains as the guy eating whole foods? Definitely not. So a lean bulk, or a lean improvement phase, as I like to call it, isn't about eating as much as possible, but it's about eating enough of the right food to support growth while minimizing unnecessary fat gain. And you are still going to get fat at the end of the day. Not fat. You are still going to get softer at the end of the day. My abs are way blurry right now compared to where they were a year ago, but the fact that I can still see them at all tells you how efficient and slowly I've been pushing my weight. So at the end of the day, you're not just feeding your stomach or your taste buds, you're feeding the whole construction project. So if there's one final thing I want you to take away from the video, it's this. Your muscles don't care about how much weight necessarily is on the bar. They care about, or they don't care about how people watch your set or judge you in the gym. They don't care really about your 1 rep max. I mean, morons probably will that ego lift and are small, and you're going to get bigger than them. So the only response, the muscles only respond to tension and your ability to create that and then recover from that. So I mean, I think this is pretty solid for 1.5 years of lifting. You let me know, maybe in the comments though, or if you guys have any criticisms on. The only thing I really think I could be wrong on is probably volume, maybe, but everything else is based on hundreds of hours of going through content. And so I want takeaways to be dial in nutrition, exercise selection, and most of all consistency, which I hope you get from the motivation due to the knowledge I'm presenting in this video. And so I want you to remember all this, and I want you to problem solve your recovery and engineer your nutrition, engineer your muscle growth, and engineers be getting jacked, man. Thanks for watching, guys. Peace.